Hi everyone, my name is Emir Pastor. I'm an IoT strategist and product manager. This channel is all about IoT, and in this channel and specifically in this series, I'm covering all aspects of IoT from the hardware to the communication, cloud system application, and specifically on top of that, the security definitely. The goal here is that to help manufacturers and product managers to design and launch a more successful IoT products. You know, IoT is everywhere these days, from the elliptical, smart home devices, agriculture, everywhere, just name it. But one big segment of the IoT is the smart home devices and gadgets. And as a matter of fact, I have been in the field of the smart home for the last 15 years. This segment is really a large segment these days. Actually, right now, we are in 2021, we are about $100 billion in this market actually, and they're expecting by 2026 it will be more than a $300 billion. And look at the smart speakers these days. Alexa, Google Assistant, other smart speakers. We have more than 100 million smart speakers, and you can see how these things, they should be connected, they should work together. One of the big revolution, I can say, in this industry was the group called CHIP, Connected Home over IP, that founded in 2019. And today I have a very special guest, Sujata Neidig. She's a marketing director of NXP, a marketing VP of the marketing at Thread Group, and one of the main members that they founded this Connected Home over IP group. Thank you so much to attend this podcast, and I will pass it to you to talk about your background and any information you want to share before we go to the smart home section.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So as you said, I am a marketing director at NXP. I have been in the industry, the semiconductor industry, for over 25 years. Started in engineering and then moved into different marketing roles and have done product management, product marketing. My focus is on connectivity, wireless connectivity, and enabling smart home, smart building applications. Also, as part of my role, I drive our standards efforts for NXP on wireless connectivity for the narrowband wireless connectivity. So I represent NXP on the board of directors for Thread Group and have been a founding member there and run the marketing for Thread Group. And then for what was called Zigbee Alliance and is now Connectivity Standards Alliance, NXP is also a board level member. And I'm on the board there and a vice chair and active in a lot of the marketing efforts across Zigbee and the new chip that's now called Matter. So that's my background information.
That's great. I appreciate it. And I believe that will be really helpful, the discussion we have today, for the product managers and manufacturers, because you are one of the main members of this group and you can help us to understand exactly what's going on and what will be the vision for the next 5-10 years. So personally, my experience with the smart home, I started with power line carrier for a smart grid, and then I started working with ABB, with the European KNX standard. And at the time, the KNX was a really great standard for European products. And the reason was, it was not just ABB, it was a standard that other companies, they adopt. And basically, there was a software at the time, ETS. We used that software and we were able to connect all KNX devices. So that was a really great ecosystem. But I can say for sure, the history of the connectivity in a smart home has two segments: before December 2019 and after December 2019. And the reason is that because before 2019, we knew there were a bunch of communication protocols. ABB was doing something, Samsung was doing something else, Apple, Google, all these big competitors, they had their own protocols. But the revolution was the fact, actually, all these companies, they came together. So we all knew that actually that would be great if in the future we can make a standard, unify the standard for communication, because you buy something from one company, you buy something else from someone else, and you cannot connect them together. And one of the big markets was all these gateways, they can talk to multiple technologies, LoRaWAN, I don't know, BLE, Zigbee, Z-Wave, just name it. Um, and and after 2019, basically these competitors, they came together. They mentioned they want to work together. So honestly, my hats off to you guys that you did it. We knew the problem, but you guys, you really did it, and you came together and you made a deal. My question is that how is it possible?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I think you gave a lot of good background information about the smart home, how it's evolved. And you think back, smart home has been discussed about for over 10 years, right? And the promise of the smart home, some people would say it hasn't really delivered, that the industry hasn't delivered on the promise. Now, we've made lots of strides and progress. There are a lot more devices that are considered smart home devices, but I wouldn't say that they're really making the home smarter, or they're not really enabling that right user experience. And so what is now the Connectivity Standards Alliance, and before was Zigbee Alliance, has been in existence for I think 15 years, developing standards to solve certain problems. And during that history of building the standards organization, there's a good infrastructure of how to develop technologies, how to collaborate across companies, across industries, across regions, to come up with something that works, that addresses market-based problems. And that is what the Alliance has really been driving forward. And the board members have really been driving it from being a standards organization that just worries about specific technologies to more of a market driven, what does the market need, what does the industry need to drive adoption. And because of that, we have members, we have members that do silicon, like NXP. We have other component providers. We have software providers, and we have companies that build end devices. And I think that what really triggered this is that as a leader in the industry from a standards perspective, the Alliance put together these events to try to pull together all the leading companies and outline what are the major problems that are facing the industry. Let's prioritize those and agree on the prioritization, and then let's find a way to solve them. And one of the biggest frustrations for consumers, and I think all of the major consumer ecosystem and device manufacturer companies see this, is that their business is growing, but it's not growing at the rate that they would like it to. That we have the techies, the people that are interested in gadgets are buying more and more smart home devices, but it's not really proliferating as much as it could to the mass market of people, right? And there's been trends, with the voice, that's been voice assisted speakers has been a big change in that. But still, now what consumers have is they're frustrated because they buy things and they don't work with each other, and they don't know how to set things up. Like, it's too complicated. And so as industry leaders, we got together and said, well, there's so many more areas to innovate on. We should work together to provide this basic compatibility and interoperability and how to do that. And so that's kind of what initiated the kind of the discussion there, and then within the Alliance, we're able to pull in and talk to the different leading companies and bring them into the conversation. And once we had agreement that yes, we need to address this problem as an industry instead of each company trying to address it themselves. And that's how what was Project Chip was started. That how can we provide a method for devices to be able to talk to each other across ecosystems and across device types in the simplest way possible. Let's develop that and solve real world problems.
Oh, that's fantastic, actually. And I believe the project started with Apple, Google, and Amazon at the beginning. What was your biggest challenge to work with all these big competitors? Actually, I know they realized what was the problem and they wanted to grow. But what was your biggest challenges?
Well, so there's a different culture for each company on how to address things. There's also already existing technologies, and companies have invested heavily in those. So how do they migrate from what they've invested in to this unified approach? And then how do you move consumers too? Because there's this idea, like for instance, Signify has the Hue bulbs, right? Or Philips Hue bulbs, and there's millions of those in the market. So how do you bring out a new technology without obsoleting the company's existing product portfolio? So I think there is a challenge in that every company has their own strategies and their own objectives. But by focusing on, so we said we focused on what's the consumer's problem, but that then comes back to the ecosystem providers and the device manufacturers and the technology providers, because there's so many technologies and they're getting more and more complex, and they can't keep investing in these systems that don't work across everybody. So device manufacturers like Residio or a company that's building smart home devices, they have to choose then. Do I want to be part of the Amazon ecosystem? Do I want to be part of the Google ecosystem? Do I want to be part of the Apple ecosystem? And they design accordingly. And if they want to be a part of all of them, then they have to create multiple SKUs, which means they have to have redundant resources, not just developing, but maintaining and supporting in the field. And so I think highlighting those problems is what drew the companies together. And that's what the Alliance also brings an advantage, because the Alliance is a neutral body, right? And it's got an infrastructure of how teams can get together and collaborate. There's policies and procedures on how to bring new ideas to the table, how to discuss them, how to vote on them, and how to progress to the next step then. So the decision-making process and what needs to be evaluated, and giving all members equal opportunity and equal say. The big companies don't get more votes than other companies. It's one vote per company, and you move forward with what works and addresses the problems in the most comprehensive way.
Okay, that's great. And you mentioned actually the bigger company, they already have some sort of the ecosystem that they are already using. So I remember from the moment this group they announced they're working together to bring a new technology, and that was December 2019, and it was a CS 2020. I met you actually. We were discussing
Yes.
what were the technologies. So now at that time I had a customer at that time in the lighting industry, and I was trying to convince them Bluetooth, specifically BLE mesh, will be the really good solution for you guys, because phones, they're already supporting Bluetooth, and Bluetooth mesh in the future probably is going to be part of that SDK, and that could be a really good ecosystem. But this group came together, and they mentioned there would be some sort of the IP-based technology, and one of the technology really good candidate at that time was Thread Group and Thread Technology. So my question is that what's going to happen for the other technologies that we already have? I know these manufacturers are talking about the new gateways that they have. They're going to support Thread in the future. And honestly, I'm not sure the Thread will be the final answer. Is it official, the Thread, or no? Still, we are working with a different technology. So for the Alliance Group.
Right. So, Project Chip is now called Matter. So I will use the term Matter because I'm now getting used to that. But Matter was defined from the beginning to be based on IP, because IP is so proliferate everywhere, and there's so many like security ways to do security, different applications. The idea is to make this whole technology be plug and play. So Matter just fits wherever you need to put it in, and IP is the foundation for that. And so because IP is the foundation, the other thing is that in the IoT space, there's not one use case that fits all. There's many different requirements, whether it's the connectivity, the user interface, what it's connecting to, what type of data is being shared from that device to what other devices. And so Matter needed to provide flexibility in how that's done. So I think of Matter as like the language that devices speak to each other, so that a light bulb knows that this other device is a thermostat, and the thermostat knows that this is a HVAC controller. Like everybody, all the devices speak the same language and understand how to operate the other devices. But how to connect those devices is not defined by Matter. Matter is using IP so that it gives flexibility that the way devices connect, as long as it's IP, then it will work with Matter. That's the intent. But the first technologies that Matter is developing are with Thread and Wi-Fi. Both are IP based. Thread is a mesh networking, low power, secure IP based protocol that's really designed for more automation devices, small amounts of data, need low latency, need to be able to be reliable. So if one device fails, it doesn't bring down the whole network. Wi-Fi, on the other hand, provides great support for devices that are streaming audio, video, or needs direct connectivity to the cloud, instant connectivity to the cloud. So Matter supports both of those. And you're right, there are other technologies. So at the network transport layer, there could be BLE mesh. And there might be certain use cases where BLE mesh makes sense. But what Matter is going to bring is this acceptance and adoption, I would say, across all the ecosystems, so that your light bulb can be controlled with your Apple phone, with your iPhone, or your daughter's Android phone, and you can have devices from different device makers that all operate with each other. And that's a unique feature that Matter provides. But I don't think it obsoletes everything else. Like Bluetooth is still what's in phones and provides, like Bluetooth low energy is used. Bluetooth is used for provisioning Matter devices onto a network because everybody has their cell phone. And when you buy a new device, you want to be able to install it easily. So there's still a lot of use cases. I kind of call it, like I said, there's not a one size fits all. So for each of the use cases, you look at which technologies make sense to use. But I will highlight that Matter with Thread or Matter with Wi-Fi provides a very unique solution because of it being IP. Thread provides the robustness and low power, and Wi-Fi provides the higher performance capabilities.
I see. So basically, I remember at the time actually the group announced this collaboration, there was some discussion that exactly as you mentioned, Thread was a network protocol, and on top of that, it's like you're selecting between having a mail, email, or fax or phone numbers. You know how you have to connect to something else, but the language you have to talk, someone is talking Spanish, someone is talking English. So at that time, I remember the discussion was that what will be the application layer? And one of the best candidates at that time was the Zigbee protocol. And how you differentiate the Matter, or how close this Matter to something like dot.
Yeah, I think that Matter is leveraging a lot of the work did. So was the Zigbee cluster library ported to run over IP. And Zigbee has been in the market for almost 2 decades. So there's a lot of value because there's a lot of, we call them data models, right? That they understand how devices are defined and what makes up a device. So we have a really robust library in dot. And I think so some of the data model stuff from dot is definitely part of Matter, and anybody that was using Zigbee cluster library or dot will see that that's familiar. But we pulled from, Matter pulls from existing technologies. It wasn't built from scratch. It was pulling, from Google Weave, Apple's HomeKit, the Siri, Amazon Echo ecosystem, Zigbee dot. And then like on the security side, it's using known security crypto protocols like AES and SHA. So that's the other thing with Matter is we didn't want to create something all the way from scratch, completely new. We wanted to use technologies that have been deployed in the market, and we know that they work in certain use cases, and so kind of bringing the best of it all together.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So definitely this communication is not just device to device, it will be device to gateway as well. So for the gateway manufacturers like Google Assistant, Alexa, Apple HomeKit, I know for a fact actually Google Assistant is supporting Thread as a communication. I'm not sure about the Alexa, what's the plan? Maybe you have more news on that, but and also Apple HomeKit, I know they're planning to, or maybe they already supporting it. So at the end of the day, we really need to pass this data that we are from the device to cloud system. So we really need to have a gateway, and the gateway we have already placed, they should be compatible with this system, and the gateways that are coming in the future, they should be compatible. So how do you see the compatibility of the gateways that we have for Alexa, Google Assistant, and Apple HomeKit?
Yeah, so for Matter, Matter defines bridges as one of the device types, and so it defines how to bridge from a different network to a Matter-based network. And so there's that, and that a bridge can be built into a gateway, it can be built into a thermostat, it's up to, or some sort of controller, it's up to the device manufacturer. From the ecosystem providers, I can't comment on what their roadmap plans are, but I can say, you're right, Google supports Thread, and you can see from their investment and commitment to Matter that they will support Matter. Apple also, the new HomePod Mini and the Apple TV support Thread natively in those devices now, and there's a lot of products from Nanoleaf and Eve and others that are working with Thread and the HomePod Mini. So we know that Apple is adopting Thread and committed to adopting Matter. Amazon, the Amazon Echo doesn't have Thread, but it has Zigbee. So it does have mesh networking capabilities. And, they are a supporter of Matter, and how they will roll that out into their products will be, they'll bring that information. When a couple of weeks ago is when the Connectivity Standards Alliance launched as Connectivity Standards Alliance, and they launched Matter. You can look at the newsroom in the CSA website to get content. There's a webinar video that shows the different ecosystem leaders and what their plans are for Matter. So that can give you some direction on insight into what they're thinking. But I would say that there's definitely a trend towards using the IP-based solutions, and that already today companies like Google, Amazon, Apple are using some of these technologies, and they're driving a lot of the efforts on Matter. So
I see.
And
I see. Do you see any point that the phone actually, because one of the things about the BLE, specifically BLE mesh, was the fact actually we wanted to, everyone knows what's the Bluetooth, so we wanted to not just its gateway to talk to the devices, also your phone is a big part of this smart home ecosystem, so your phone directly talk to those devices. Do you see any point in the near future that phone will be part of this ecosystem?
well, I think they're part of the ecosystem as kind of an accessory, right? So the phone is being used to, like I said, to provision or add devices to a network or remove devices to a network. A phone is what uses the app and is the controller that can be used as the controller. Now it's using BLE to connect to something that then that device uses Thread or Wi-Fi and Matter to connect to all the devices. And then, I don't know, people ask, like, will cell phones have Thread radios in them in the future? We have UWB radios in phones now, so it's not out of the question, but that's something we'll wait and see. But in the meantime, the phone is absolutely an extension to the network that's used as the interface between the user and the network. So I think that it's serving the right purpose today, and in the future, if costs and can scale properly, then maybe it will have a radio in it that can do the direct connectivity.
I see. That's great. And I want to ask you, what is your vision for the next 5 years? What's going to happen with the Matter Group, and specifically this project, and how other companies they are going to be part of this integration?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So Matter is on target to launch at the end of this year. So, the spec is available to members today, and the certification program is in development. And that's a key aspect. Having certification is a key aspect of guaranteeing that the device is implementing the technology properly. So that version 1 of the spec will be available at the end of this year, and I think we'll see some products hitting the market at the end of this year using Matter. But you're asking beyond that, what happens? And I think that what we'll see is some of the ecosystems are going to drive within their partner programs the adoption of Matter, because that's the way they want to drive the user experience. So you'll start to see more and more products come out. And I, the hope is that by having Matter, it takes care of the plumbing, and then these ecosystems companies and device manufacturers can focus on innovation at the device level and the user, how the user interfaces with the device. But for Matter, I think what we'll see is more improvements, like adding more device types. Today, there's a set number of device types that will be supported by version 1, but we'll be able to expand beyond that into new areas in the home, and also expand beyond the home. So, we say multi-dwelling units are really smart homes. They're just larger scale. So we can see that Matter will apply to more markets. In fact, there is a commercial building strategy group within Matter that's working to define the use cases that are specific to that. So I think we'll see a lot of evolution there. And I think the other thing I would say is when Matter starts to roll out, you will have bridges to bridge legacy networks or existing, I shouldn't say legacy, I should say existing networks with Matter devices. Mm-hmm. And then I think over time you'll start seeing the existing devices get iterated on and have Matter built into them, so that we can get beyond the bridges.
Oh, fantastic. And
because you asked for a 5-year outlook, so that's my outlook. I think you'll start seeing the adoption of Thread and Wi-Fi with Matter, and the user, the consumer satisfaction that brings, and that we'll start to scale that. And I think it's going to grow pretty significantly. The other thing is I would say that I think it's also going to scale more to other regions. Like we're already seeing a lot of interest in China now. Whereas initially, it was Apple, Amazon, Google, Samsung SmartThings, and a few other board directors that were mainly North American, European based companies. But I think what we'll see is more and more involvement from other regions to drive the adoption of Matter and the development of Matter, because there will be new versions to address new use cases over time.
Fantastic. And actually, could I ask you a question? How this Connected Over IP group changed the name to Matter? And I know recently Zigbee Alliance, they changed the name. So how it happened?
Yeah, so when Project Chip was announced, it was always announced as a temporary name. The idea was that these companies came together and agreed on what needed to be, what we need to do, but didn't want to do the work within that small group. We wanted it to bring in all of the relevant companies. And so we announced it as soon as we could without the brand, because we knew it would take time to develop the technology and get that in place. So then as the technology has been in development, the marketing teams went to say, okay, well, we don't want to call this Project Chip forever. It's not a project, it's a real technology. Connected Home over IP kind of limits it also to the home, which is not the intent longer term. So it's like, what do we want to do to really convey the value proposition of what the technology is? And so we went through a pretty detailed, comprehensive effort to come up with the new brand name. And, Matter was selected because Matter is foundational and elemental to life. So in the same sense, Matter, the technology, is foundational to connecting smart things. And I think that the logo really also gives it that sense of elements, and the sense of symmetry gives you this really strong mark of approval. Like if you look at that mark and it's like, this is the mark of approval that this device is going to work. Then you asked about Zigbee Alliance changing to Connectivity Standards Alliance. When we announced Project Chip in December of 2019, there were a lot of questions like, what happened to Zigbee? Is Zigbee gone? Oh, is Chip Zigbee? Are they the same thing? Like there was a lot of confusion. So Zigbee Alliance was created with one technology in mind, and that was Zigbee, but has since grown to cover multiple standards and technologies beyond Zigbee. And so it was time to reflect that in the name so that it doesn't cause the confusion in the market. So now with Matter, we have Zigbee, and there will be other technology groups, working groups within the alliance that will expand into other areas. And so we wanted the name to reflect what the organization is doing. So we're developing connectivity standards, kind of leading the industry and the IoT market, and collaborating too, because you can see that Matter uses Thread and Wi-Fi. It didn't create something else, you know. It's using from what's existing, and using BLE for provisioning. And so I think that that's what the Connectivity Standards Alliance is it's a leader of shepherding IoT into the future and bringing the right technologies to market. So the new names really reflect what the organization does, and Matter reflects what the technology is.
No, I really enjoyed it. The way actually explained why the matter actually, definitely I can say uh, that was great effort behind this change. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. And now I want to ask you actually because you're also part of the NXP. So how NXP is part of this story, and basically how manufacturers they can adopt the technology with the help of the NXP.
Right. So NXP, we've been involved in not just wireless connectivity, but we do microcontrollers, microprocessors, networking processors. So we've been involved in developing technologies to facilitate different use cases. And connectivity has been a big part of that. So we've invested in wireless connectivity for quite a while now. We were founders of the Zigbee Alliance, one of the founding companies of Zigbee Alliance, and we were also a founding member company of Thread Group. And today we're members of both organizations at the board level. We also are a board level member of Wi-Fi Alliance. And then there's also FIRA, which does UWB. We're board level members there, and NFC. So we have a history of working on standards and, not just implementing standards, but we have been creating the standards. We've been helping develop the specs and then the source code implementation. And so that's our involvement. And you asked about, how we helped with Matter or Project Chip. And I think our experience with Thread, with Zigbee, of developing those specs, implementing them, working with customers on the problems they faced to deploy it, like we see everything from what does it take to build it, and then what does it take for our customers to deploy it into their applications. So I think we have really unique perspective to be able to contribute in that way. And again, it's not only the wireless connectivity, because we work with customers across markets, and we have a large compute portfolio. Like I call it the compute continuum, because we have everything from really low power, 40 megahertz MCUs and 8-pin packages to several gigahertz multi-core processors that are much more complex. And so we're able to pair the wireless connectivity with whatever compute is needed. And then the other area that we have a lot of expertise in to bring to Matter and just to IoT is security. So we have dedicated secure element chips. We've worked in banking type products to develop security for that. We have a technology group within our CTO office that's focused on security standards, security development. And so we have a lot of know-how there about what are the different types of attacks, how do you protect against them, what's happening in the industry, what are the other technologies to use, and how do we converge on using the same technologies. And so that's how we've been contributing to Matter, to help develop the spec. But at the same time, we're developing our own reference platforms. And one thing I guess I didn't say yet about Matter that's unique is that Matter is being developed in an open source way. So the spec is open source. Today, the spec open source is within the membership only. When it's released as the 1.0, then at some point after that, it'll get released publicly. But the development within the membership is through a GitHub, and that's how the spec has been developed. And also the spec is being developed in parallel with implementation. So it's easy to write things into a spec. It's harder to then figure out how to implement that. So we're doing it in parallel. So making sure that there's a platform that can run what we're trying to define here. And so from NXP, we are contributing our referenced implementation and contributing to the open source. And the open source GitHub for the code is available publicly. There's a public GitHub, and so we have our platforms built into that, and companies that are interested in learning more about Matter and Thread and how to implement. We provide solution. Our reference platform that's available in there today is focused on Thread, but we will add Wi-Fi because we also have Wi-Fi in our portfolio. We're enabling secure element for applications that need further security. And we're also going to be adding MCU and MPU hosted versions of our implementation. So we feel like we can cover a very broad range of product requirements with a single, from a single company. And what we are able to do with that is we can simplify the developer experience because our software enablement tools are common then across all of that, and being able to, we provide all the software integration so that our customers can focus on their application and not on how to implement Matter with Thread.
Yep. Actually, I like the ecosystem at NXP you guys have, from the NFC, all the way from the NFC to the communication, and also to the high performance microprocessors and microcontrollers. You guys have a really great ecosystem. Let's say there is a manufacturer or product manager, they want to go with the solution, the Matter solution, actually really fast. So what is your suggestion? How should they start? What's the first step?
The first step is, so you can go to our nxp.com slash, I don't know if the slash Matter, but look for Matter on nxp.com under the products, wireless connectivity, and there's a page for Matter, and it highlights our wireless MCU that we have done the initial implementation on for Thread plus Matter. And there you'll get the information that there's dev kits already available, you can get samples. But then also in it's still called the chip GitHub right now. It'll get changed to Matter. But in the GitHub, we have our build. So our wireless MCU is called K32W, W for wireless. And that platform is in the auto build section for the Project Chip GitHub. And so you can get our code, our documentation, order the dev kit, and do some evaluation and testing. And, because it's all being developed now, we're not launched completely on all of our platforms. We'll be releasing it in phases between now and the end of the year, because again, the spec is still in development. So we're doing a lot of work to make sure we're meeting the spec requirements, and then also optimizing the implementation from a power and memory usage perspective. But we have a webinar we did in March that's available through the website I provided about our views on what Project Chip means, and then our K32W implementation with the door lock example. And so that's available. And then in July, we'll be doing another webinar talking about more sophisticated, with maybe more routing capabilities and Wi-Fi in addition to Thread. So we'll be showing the different phases as we have them available.
Fantastic. I believe this discussion was really great. Actually, it's going to help a lot of people. I appreciate it. And I want to change the gear a little bit. We are all human at the end of the day. I know how fantastic you're doing in the Matter group, actually, at the NXP. But besides that, I want to ask you a personal question. What is your hobby besides all these technologies you're working on?
Yes. So I would say that one of the hobbies I've really gotten into in the last 10 years is running. So I'm a runner. I was not a runner in my younger years at all, but I found as I grew older and once I had kids that running was the best way, the most efficient way to get some exercise in, and you don't need a gym, you don't need special equipment. I can walk out my front door and go for a run, and now my kids are older, so I'm a runner. I've done marathons. I did my first ultra marathon in April. That was 30 kilometers, and then I broke my foot a month ago, so I'm kind of rehabilitating now, but we'll be back to running as soon as possible. But I find that running gives me a sense of peace, a way for me to process and just have time to myself. And the other thing I really love about running is you can set goals and work towards them and achieve them. Like you have very distinct, you can see, you can get faster, you can run further. If you put in the effort, you'll see improvements. And so I really like that about running.
Wow. That was really amazing, actually. I never knew that actually you're a runner as well. Wow, that was fantastic.
There's a lot of, I mean, I think marathon running has just grown so much. I live in Austin, Texas, and there's a very large running community here, a lot of people. So it's not just about the exercise and physical, but also about connecting with other
Yep.
people.
And by the way, that's a really nice city. I remember that was 3, 4 years ago. That was a NXP expo. Actually, I
Yes,
attended.
the technology forum, yeah.
Exactly. I like the city a lot.
It's a great
That's
city, yeah.
great. That's great. Is there anything else actually you want to add that I didn't ask?
I think we've covered quite a bit of ground on
Yep.
this call and it went by so quickly. So kudos to you for asking all the good questions. Um, no, I would just say that, I think one thing I would say is that standards are really a way to be able to innovate and develop more quickly. And what you can accomplish through the collaboration of people with different goals, different experiences, different insights, it's really amazing. I know it's kind of maybe corny, but that, teamwork makes the dream work. I mean, this is really the way to address some of the challenges that we see in the industry. And I'm really excited. Like, I get a lot of satisfaction or a lot of fulfillment from working with other people in these standards efforts and seeing how they're using it for their companies and solving problems that they need to address. So it's a really exciting way to handle things.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate your
Thank
time.
you.
That's a great discussion. I'm pretty sure it's going to help manufacturers and product managers how they have to adopt this new technology, the matter actually, in a really fast manner. I appreciate it. Um,
Thank you.
Great. And for my audience, I will put a link to this website that how you can engage with the NXP in the comment area. And if you wanna watch more videos and more episodes related to IoT, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much.